We're back.
Welcome to part 2, 501c3, the killing of God. As you probably ascertained from part 1, our founding fathers fought and died for our religious freedoms, especially in the continent of the United States. Over the course of time, things have changed, and the government, whether religion wants to acknowledge it or not, have gained control through the 501c3. Now, I know for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we were all appalled when we learned that the Watchtower Bible Tract Society had become a member of the United Nations as an NGO, and with everything that Watchtower was teaching about the United Nations and how it was the scarlet-colored wild beast or the harlot or whatever, we were pretty shocked to learn that Watchtower was a member for many, many, many years. And when they got caught, they lied about it by saying, well, we joined because we just wanted a library card. That was all debunked. That was very deceitful on Watchtower's part. But what a lot of people do not realize is that the 501c3 tax exempt puts all religions, but in this particular case, Watchtower, in a very precarious spot. And before we go on, I want to read a couple of scriptures that Peter Kershaw brings out as he's tackling this subject in the book Hush Money. One of the scriptures he uses is found at 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 17. He says, "Do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. For what fellowship do righteousness and lawlessness have? Or what sharing does light have with darkness?" And by the way, I'm reading this from the New World Translation. "Further, what harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what portion does a faithful person have with an unbeliever? And what agreement does God's temple have with idols? For we are a temple of the living God, just as God said, 'I shall reside among them and walk among them, and I shall be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore get out from among them and separate yourselves,' says Jehovah, 'and quit touching the unclean thing, and I will take you in.'" So that scripture is pretty self-explanatory. It doesn't need any explanation. Now let's go to James chapter 1 in verses 26 and particularly 27. "If any man seems to himself to be a formal worshiper, yet, Watchtower does, and yet does not bridle his tongue, and goes on deceiving his own heart, or deceiving the flock, this man's form of worship is futile. The form of worship that is clean and undefiled from the standpoint of our God and Father is this: to look after orphans and widow, thus jar jar, and to keep oneself without spot from the world." Now James 4:4.
So joining the UN does not keep themselves without spot from the world.
No, it doesn't.
And I know where you're going with this, and this doesn't keep them without spot either.
Oh, no. James 4:4. "Adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world is constituting himself an enemy of God." Well, how does this relate to churches being 501c3s? Well, I'm going to read from the book, page 44. And this is an excerpt from a book that's called Cults That Killed by Larry Kahner, Kahhaner, page 64. Now remember, 2 Corinthians 6. Okay? There are other orthodox satanic groups that exists whose names we'll never know because they are not made public. Groups usually go public by incorporating, enjoying the tax-exempt status of traditional religions. This is Peter's words. A number of satanic organizations are formed as incorporated 501c3s, such as the Temple of Set, founded by U.S. Army Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Colonel Michael A. Aquino. Those familiar with the nefarious world of military psych ops will immediately recognize the name Aquino. Now, I'm just going to leave right there and go down a little bit more. So the obvious question is, how is a church made legitimate by obtaining a 501c3 when Satanists are granted the same 501c3, having going through the application process? Aren't religions and Satanists feeding off the same hand? That contradicts exactly what Paul was talking about. What portion does Christ have with Belial? Well, they do share a portion, and it's connected to the 501c3. Religion, and in particular, Watchtower, who claims to be God's spokesman here on earth, you're feeding the same tables that demons are eating from. My goodness.
That's what they blame the whistleblowers of doing.
Exactly. But ultimately, the question really does become this. Why would a religion even want to become a 501c3? Well, it actually has to do with John Q. Public. It doesn't have anything to do with the United States government. It has to do with John Q. Public. First of all, let's say John Q. Public wants to make a donation of $10,000 to the Watchtower and Babel Crap Society. He makes his donation, and then he turns in his paperwork to the IRS, and the IRS says, wait a minute, you claim you make a $10,000 donation to Watchtower? Where's your receipt? If you don't have a receipt, you can't deduct this. Well, now you have to legitimize Watchtower religion by becoming a 501c3 charitable entity. That gives them the right to issue a receipt to John Q. Public, who donates $10,000. And it all comes down to a matter of greed. Because instead of saying, well, wait a minute, wait, John Q. Public, if you've got $10,000 to donate, why don't you give a little bit here, a little bit there, feed the poor, clothe the children? Well, hell no, just give it all to us. We'd rather have the $10,000. Here's your receipt. That's exactly, in essence, what they're doing. It becomes a matter of greed. Instead of taking that one-time donation from John Q. Public and spreading it out among the needy, religion says, we want it all. So, Mr. Government, Mr. IRS, we will fill out your form, the 501c3, and we will gladly be bound to you. But it gets even worse. You know, the thing about Watchtower is that as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were all taught that in the early days of Watchtower's history, Rutherford went all the way to the United States Supreme Court for their right to preach on Sundays. But there has to be more to that involved.
Especially since, according to him, the churches already had the right to do so.
They already had that freedom.
Why?
What was Rutherford really fighting for if the Constitution of the United States and the First Amendment already guaranteed religious freedom? So
the only thing I can think of then is because as a church, they already had the right, but as a corporation, they had to go fight for that right.
They had to fight for the right of the corporation to preach on Sundays. It was never ever an issue of religious right. Because they incorporated, their master now becomes the government.
Well, many Jehovah's Witnesses may be asking, dear, why would Watchtower incorporate then in the first place? What possible reason would C.T. Russell have for doing that? We have the answer. At least we think we do. And what's funny, it's that same April Fool's article from 1920 Watchtower from part 1.
Imagine that.
Yep,
While
April
she
1st,
reads that,
1920.
While she reads that, I'm going to scratch off some notes that we've got here so we won't repeat ourselves.
Now, it's interesting because there is kind of, I don't know, I think I would call them charter propositions that they have in here. Because on page 1 of this article, which was actually page 99, some propositions. Now, they have a thing here about the difference between the Watchtower Bible Tract Society and different various ecclesias and to the church as a body. That's one of those old words. Okay, it has been claimed by some that these points are made conditions of fellowship. We first make a brief statement of the points and then deal with the matter more in detail. Number 1, our understanding is that the Watchtower Bible Tract Society as a body corporate is the servant of the church and does not exercise control and authority over the Lord's people. They didn't uphold that one.
Nope.
Number 2, the basis for fellowship and unity in the church is our relationship to God through Jesus Christ and our harmony with the divine arrangement. Number 3, there should be a full liberty of conscience with no attempt to coerce the views of one by another. Interesting. Number 4, church government should be maintained according to the word of the Master and the Apostles, and all should be willing to be governed by the majority. This principle applies to separate ecclesias and to the whole body of the church. Now, they got some more here that I'm not going to read because it doesn't have anything to do with us. How the society provides pilgrim service for the ecclesias that request it. Now, that's what we would consider today pioneers.
Pioneers, yeah.
So, I'm going to skip down to the channel subheading. Second paragraph, last sentence on the page. The channel itself does not originate the truth, but it is merely used as a means to an end. So they don't originate the truth? Interesting.
Right. I know.
So they have some more questions that you have to answer, But then down at the subheading, and now we're on page 100, the purpose of the society. And we are going to go down to the second paragraph. Now this is interesting. No one in present truth for a moment doubts that Brother Russell filled the office of the faithful and wise servant. Well, they've changed that one.
Mm-hmm.
Whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season. He organized the society shortly after he began his work, but not until 1884 was it incorporated. Without a doubt, he saw there was a probability of the work being carried on after his change. While he was on earth, he personally directed everything concerning the harvest work, but preparing for a future contingency. He wrote and published in the Watchtower in October 1884. Interesting. There's a ...
You mean Rutherford is starting a quote from an older Watchtower and it starts with a ...
So, you
Guess
know
what
what?
we got?
Let's just get the original bond volume, the original
And read the ...
Watchtower, and read it. Because you never know what's hiding in those ... Okay, now here it starts, though it, brackets, the society has already done a great work. Well, the ... just says Zion's Watchtower Tract Society, though it has already done a great work and in the hand of God has been a power in publishing the truth, the influence of which is being felt already on both sides of the Atlantic, has never yet had legal incorporation, nor was such incorporation considered necessary by its friends, it having already all the powers necessary for the present work and similar to that of 9/10 of other small societies. Now it goes on to talk about, you hear it coming, it's like they're trying to explain why they have to get incorporated. Okay, now in Rutherford's quote in 1920, it says, like I read before, that the future contingency he wrote and published in the Watchtower, and though how the society has already done great work, that other small societies. But a new phase of the question has arisen. It seems tolerably certain that some of the saints will be in the flesh during a great part, at least, of the time of trouble, meaning the Great Tribulation. So we're going to skip down. It says, should those at present prominently identified with the work not be the last to be changed, some interruption of the work might result. So they were worried that there was going to be some interruption during the Great Tribulation of the work being done. But this may be obviated by having a legal standing granted by a state charter. Now,
A legal standing granted by who? God? By God? No, by a state charter.
okay, so after they have state charter, they have another ... So it's like, okay, what are they hiding? What's Rutherford hiding in here? So we go back to the 1884 Watchtower, October, page 671. After the part about the granted by a state charter, there's a whole paragraph missing. Another matter also has been considered. Two or more who had already contributed to the funds of the society suggested that as age was coming on and opportunities for earning a living decreasing, they could not now give more largely without endangering penury. And I had to look that up. It means a great poverty or very low income, extreme poverty.
Well, see, that goes right back to what I said earlier about if you make a large donation, you can write that off in your taxes without hurting your penury.
Yeah, and leaving themselves a burden on their friends, which they could not see to be the Lord's will. Yet they are desirous that in some way they might be able to put the Lord's money, consecrated to Him, into His work. This naturally suggested the idea that there might be many others similarly situated and with similar ideas. Such monies or other property donated by will to the society, it might be unable to receive or dispose of without a charter.
Without being incorporated.
So then it goes on with the part that Rutherford has. From all these considerations, it was deemed best to apply for a charter, and this has been done. We expect that it will be granted without delay. In that event, you will learn more concerning the matter in our next issue.
Goes right back to what I said about greed.
Yeah, and then Rutherford has that on December 13th, 1884, the charter was granted, a notice of which was published in the Watchtower for January 1885. So that's all that this was about, was because they wanted to keep getting the big donations and the estates of people willing them their estates.
And they had to be a state recognized, a state legalized entity. And that's why they incorporated.
Yes. Now, I don't know if you want to go into
No, go ahead, because I've got
okay.
a lot of definitions I'm going to be reading from Black's
Okay.
Law Dictionary.
So, last week, our dear friend Atlantis helped the website avoidjw.org. Great website if you need reference material, archives and stuff. But they have on there now Watchtower forms. Now, I know some of you may think, oh, it's just a bunch of forms that elders have to fill out, and send to the society and stuff. But the thing is I started looking at some of these forms, and there's some really interesting stuff in there, like gems.
Well, it's the same forms that a satanic cult would have to fill out also, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
See? You're feeding at the same table.
Yeah, and you covered my note here. Anyway, this is the S36, I believe, form.
I don't remember.
But it's dated November 1st, 1995. Information regarding ownership of Kingdom Halls. And it's the usual blah, 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 legalese. Now, what's interesting about this and what applies to what we're talking about here is when they start talking about incorporating. Now, individual Kingdom Halls can become incorporated. In fact, some states require it.
Yes.
Now, we know our old congregation in Tijeras, it is known as the Corporation of Jehovah's Witnesses of Tijeras, New Mexico.
Right.
So, on the second page here of this form, paragraph 16, since the purpose of the congregation in forming a corporation is to hold title to Kingdom Hall property, the charter or articles of incorporation should specifically state the purpose to acquire and hold title to real estate as a meeting place and place of worship for the local congregation or local corporation of Jehovah's Witnesses. It may also include the right to accept gifts and bequests of personal and real property and to mortgage its property. If the corporation laws require that the articles of incorporation designate an organization to receive the assets of the corporation in the event of dissolution, name Watchtower and Bible Tract Society of New York Incorporated. Now, I know this is legalese, and some of you may not understand what this is saying, but if the local congregation, let's say our old congregation, Tijeras, New Mexico, closes up or dissolves, according to their articles of incorporation, all of the assets of that congregation goes to Watchtower, the big corporation.
Yeah. The snake's head.
Yep.
Yes. Now, were you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, why would the government really go to such an extent to meddle in the affairs of religion? Well, not only that, the government
Control.
but the government also recognizes the God-given authority and the God-given freedom that can be found in the Bible. Now, if you think that this statement is coming out left field, if you do not think that the Bible is more powerful than the government, then answer me these few questions. When the President of the United States of America swears his oath of office, what does he swear on? Figure it out?
The IRS code book?
The IRS code. Well, of course. I mean, any idiot would know that it's the IRS code book.
The corporation code book? UCC? I don't know.
Everybody knows it's on the Bible. When you go into a court of law and you are sworn in, what are you sworn in? I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. So help me, IRS? No. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me, Constitution of the United States? No. It's, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me, God.
Well, Jeffrey Jackson had to take that same oath when he went before the Australian Royal Commission.
Yeah, and it's ironic that the governments, or at least the government of the United States of America, and even in Australia, that they all recognize the power that this Bible has. And it's the same book that many ex-JWs just want to throw away and think it's irrelevant and it doesn't matter to us. That may be true, but it still matters to the government. And the government can use that 501c3 because they have entrapped all these religions to give them their authority. See, the United States of America in the First Amendment, these men guaranteed the rights and the freedoms of religion. Now, corporate America, the big banking business, has to get around it. So let's get going with the 501c3. If you want to make a donation to a legalized, recognized religious entity, then they will give you a receipt and you can write that off in your taxes. That's why I can't discount the Bible, because I recognize that the governments see the power behind the Bible and freedom of religion. And we're going to demonstrate that.
Well, in fact, Deep Throat has done research on the legal system now and how, I forget the percentage, but he said that a lot of the legal systems today on this planet come right from the Bible.
Right. Exactly. But, well, I just want to make a statement because the past, even when we did that, not the podcast, but the one afterwards, I forget which week it was, but we had made a statement that I believe this book right here holds the key to killing Watchtower. And I know that that sounds like that's a pretty bold statement, and if you think something's not going to work, then you've already been defeated. I would rather have tried and been defeated than not to have tried at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some... Now, unfortunately, from the perspective of this book, what Peter Kershaw is quoting from is Black's Law Dictionary number 6, the 6th edition. I only have number 5, so I'm going to have to bounce, I think, just once or twice back and forth. But in Black's Law Dictionary, now it's interesting because the definition of church is not in the 5th edition, but it's in the 6th. So why did they have to incorporate church into the 6th edition? Are churches being legally defined in courts of law now, that they had to put that definition in here? Okay. Black's Law Dictionary, church. In its most general sense, the religious society founded and established by Jesus Christ to receive, preserve, and propagate his doctrines and ordinances. His ordinances. Wouldn't that be like rules and laws and
Huh, interesting.
So why do the courts have to have a definition of church? Why do they have to establish a legal? Well, for one thing, I'm going to go in and read a definition regarding corporation. Because there has to be a separation between church and state. And since 1884, Watchtower Incorporated, there was no separation.
No.
There was no separation. Okay, here's the definition of corporation from Black's Law Dictionary.
Do you need your glasses?
No, I just need to slow down. Corporation, an artificial person or legal entity created by or under the authority of the laws of a state or nation. So if you're a corporation, then you are under the authority of the laws of a state or nation. So that brings up an interesting thing. Watchtower, as a 501c3 corporation, if you have a Jehovah's Witness elder that comes out and says openly, I'm gay, and you delete him, you can now be sued.
I wonder how many know that.
I wonder how many have even contemplated that idea. Because as Jehovah's Witnesses, we've all become appalled that other religions have allowed openly gay ministers to preach from the pulpit. Man, these people are all parts of Babylon the Great. But what you don't realize, these churches have no choice but to do that because they're a corporation and they are under the authority of the laws of the state and the nation. Now, I wonder if a JW sister decided that she really wanted to get up on that platform and give an hour-long public talk. All she's got to do is just petition the state and have the state grant that under corporate laws, because it becomes discriminatory if the Protestant church down the street allows a woman to pastor a church, but Jehovah's Witnesses don't, but yet they're both 501c3s feeding from the same demonic table as demons. Watchtower, Do you see your tits really in the ringer now, ain't it? It really is. Now it becomes discriminatory if an elder comes out of the closet and say, hey, I'm openly gay. If you delete him, he can sue your ass, Watchtower, because this is the noose that's around your neck.
And they proudly put it on back in 1884.
They were more than happy because they wanted to give a receipt for a $10,000 donation instead of letting all that money spread out. Okay, now I'm going to go to another definition. I've got these numbered, so I got to find number 3. Number 3, public liability. You think, product liability, yes. Product liability. Well, how could Watchtower be liable for its product? Well, Watchtower doesn't have a product. Yes, you do have a product, Watchtower, because you're a corporation and you have a product.
Weren't we given a product back in pre-1975 that we wouldn't have to go to school, we wouldn't have to grow old in this system?
Well, that was written in their product, and their product that they were selling from door to door was the Watchtower and Awake.
Hey, Watchtower, I'd like to return the promises of your product. Yeah. I was hosed.
Yeah, we were all hosed.
We were hosed, Tommy. We were hosed.
Yeah. Let's talk about product liability. Refers to the legal liability of manufacturers. Now, Watchtower did manufacture all of this stuff, people. Start letting your state attorney generals know. This is a manufactured product that they were selling. You remember back in the day, not too many years ago, when Watchtower said, "Oh, we're going to go on to the donation system." Because God's blessing us so much. No. As a corporation, they were selling a product which is liable to be taxed. Don't let these idiots at Watchtower tell you otherwise. They had a product that should have been legally taxed. Now, product liability. Since they had a product, what are they liable for? Well, in most products, if you get hurt by using the product, you can sue the manufacturer for injuries and or whatever you feel like suing them for.
So we've got hundreds and hundreds of products here that I think we should sue them for damages and liability.
For separating families? Okay. Refers to the legal liability of manufacturers and sellers to compensate buyers, users. We use the information in these books because you directed our lives way back when, especially when you said, oh, there's no need to get an education. We won't be in this system long enough for you to use this education. Preach for us instead. We have better goals. That product failed. You're liable.
He's right, you know.
Okay.
Even bystanders.
And even bystanders for damages or injury suffered because of defects in goods purchased. Now, wait a minute. Injuries suffered because of defects. You published many times in your manufactured product that this generation will not pass away until these things have occurred. And that includes the Great Tribulation. That product failed and it caused injury. You caused me mental anguish because I could have been a baseball player. I could have been a professional drummer. I could have been anything. But based on what you printed in your product, Watchtower, you're liable because I changed my life's course, my life's direction based on your product. You can be held liable. The problem that we're facing is that none of us, as a collective group of apostates or XJWs,
whistleblowers,
know how to attack this issue. Don't attack it from a religious perspective. Attack it from a corporation perspective. Make the state prosecute because it's the state that controls the corporations. They have a faulty product. Okay.
Well, the thing is, too, is just to mention that even in the local corporation, if someone is sexually abused, you know, they are within their rights to hold the local corporation and its board or trustees responsible for not protecting the children.
Right. Exactly.
Faulty product.
Faulty product. Okay, now my next one is going to be intended use doctrine. In product liability cases, two factors are considered. The marketing scheme of the maker. Okay, so what was Watchtower's marketing scheme? Oh, brothers and sisters, don't go get educated because this system's going to end within a few short years.
You'll die.
Never use your education, and or if you don't attach yourself to God's one true organization and Armageddon comes, you're going to die with the rest of the world.
Well, just look at their Great Tribulation bunker videos at this summer's convention. They are saying Kevin is going to die.
They're still producing the product. They're still liable.
Yep.
Okay? And marketing scheme of the maker and the foreseeability of the risks which are inherent to the product when used for the purpose intended. Now, did Watchtower see the foreseeable conclusion of what they were preaching pre-75? Yes, because they already had an escape plan. And that escape plan included, well, it was those that read more into what we were saying. It was you all heard at Son of Thunder's judicial hearing what that one idiot elder said. You all heard it. This was a foreseeable conclusion. They knew their product was going to fail, so they already had it out, ready to go. How do we prove this in a court of law? We can, if we can grow a couple pairs of big balls like this and make Watchtower choke on them. We've got the law on our side. We have to know how to use it. Okay, now, number 6.
Forgot 5.
Oh, excuse me, number 5. Thank you for keeping me straight.
That's my job.
See, what was number 5 going to be? I forgot to highlight it.
Scheme.
Scheme, yes, I did highlight. Thank you. Scheme. A design or plan formed to accomplish some purpose. A system.
You mean like a new system of things?
Maybe. When used in a bad sense, term corresponds with trick or fraud. Scheme to defraud. Wow. All you have to do is read Watchtower's words when they trick the rank and file into donating their money to support the organization, because after all, you won't be in the system long enough to reach old age. My own mother.
They even take the little kids' ice cream money now.
Yeah. My own mother, the last meal I had with my own mother, my flesh and blood, she said, Michael, I'm growing old in this system, and I'm going to die and still be in this system. And I said, yep, you and me too. You and me both. How is that not a scheme? How is that not fraud?
How is that not a product failure?
Product failure. And how is that not undue influence? Because I know damn well that before I left Watchtower, my mom placed her estate in three separate factions. Watchtower, myself, and my brother. Because Watchtower promised you we're not going to grow old in this system of things. And Mom, color you want your casket. Number 6, reliance of promise. In promissory estoppel, the plaintiff is required to prove that he relied on promise of defendant to his damage. Oh my goodness!
Oh, we didn't even begin with that one.
I was promised I would never grow old. And you've got it written in your product, Watchtower. It's written in your product. You're liable. Now, I could have been anything else but a Jehovah's Witness in this system of things, but you convinced me, your product convinced me that I would not grow old in this system of things. That is called a reliance on a promise. Did I suffer damage? Well, if I can get to the right judge and use the right words and have the right lawyer, all I got to say is, you know what, Your Honor? I cannot sustain myself through my golden years in Social Security. If I retire at 62, I'm only going to get $700 a month. But if I work until I'm 70, I could get $1,000 a month. Damn it! If I'd have had the opportunity to become a professional musician, a professional sports star, I could have relied on multi-millions of dollars. That reliance on promising proved fraudulent. Everything we need to kill Watchtower is tied up with their 501c3 corporation.
And the justice system.
And the justice, yeah. Okay, number 7. Promissory fraud. A promise to perform made at a time when the promisor has a special intention, has a present intention not to perform. It is a misrepresentation of the promisor's frame of mind and is, for that reason, a fact which makes it the basis of an action of deceit. It is sometimes called common law fraud.
And I have a post-it note here. It says, don't go to college. How is that not a promissory fraud?
It is. Because I promise you, you will not be in this system long enough to use that college education. Wow. This guy knows what the hell he's talking about. Doesn't he, Watchtower? Going on. Peter's words. By incorporating the church, the government is given exactly what it wants. Control. By you saying yes to those baptismal questions, Jehovah's Witnesses, the organization, the Watchtower Bible Crap Society, gets exactly what it wants. Control. If you don't like that control, then we'll disfellowship you and we'll hold your family as hostage. This is precisely the opposite of what the colonial clergy fought for and what the founding fathers bequeathed to American churches. Now, we're not talking about cults. Cults have bastardized the First Amendment. Okay, the book by, you'll have to pronounce that again for me.
Chalcedon?
Chalcedon Albert, number 1, entitled The War Against Christ's Kingdom. Thank you.
Sorry, it's alert.
Yeah. Alert. Yeah, alert number 1. Yeah, duh.
It's really tiny print.
It's real tiny print. Yes, it's real.
The War Against Christ's Kingdom. Chalcedon alert number 1. There we go.
He writes, the clergy demanded the First Amendment because they knew that an established church is a controlled church. A controlled church is a silent church, and usually a corrupt one as well. Now, in getting some information regarding this, we remembered a pastor that was pretty famous.
One of the funniest ones
One of the funniest ones that we've ever come across. So why don't we just start playing some of the clips so that everybody so everybody will know who we're referring to here. And then when we come back, I'm going to read something that Peter Kershaw wrote in this book regarding this same televangelist.
I'm just getting into a prophetic vein. Someone with the digestive tract problems, quickly call. There's a miracle for you. Intestinal problems. Someone with similar intestinal problems. We've seen several people being delivered from the colostomy bag. Disability with a child, some type of a learning disability. We've seen many, many children healed. We've seen midgets grow. We've seen arms and legs that stop growing because the growth cells that stop. I don't make this stuff up. We have thousands of testimonials documented by people's lives that have been changed.